Welcome to Reporting with MunkiReport with John and Rick. I'm John. I'm a MacAdmin at the University of Pittsburgh. My user handle is Tuxedo, and you can reach me at Twitter, Slack, and on GitHub. The best way to get a hold of me is on Slack.
And I'm Rick. I am Senior IT Manager at Heil Communications. I work in the Boston office, which is Partners and Simons. We're advertising agencies. You can reach me at my teenage angsty Twitter and Slack handle, Refreshing Apathy. And you can find me on GitHub at Rick Heil. So this is Reporting with MunkiReport. Hopefully everyone's in the right session. How many people have heard of MunkiReport before? Show of hands. Oh, wow, okay. All right, and how many people are using it right now? Awesome. All right, sweet. So we got some experts in the room here. Hopefully we'll teach you a lot more about the application today. The second half we're going to go through with John kind of a bit of the background. So if you are wanting to gather your own custom data, make some modules, we'll get you started on that. So what is MunkiReport? MunkiReport is a powerful open source web application. It uses a client-based module system to gather information about your Macs and report it on a web dashboard. That's a mouthful, so let's break that down a little bit. MunkiReport is a web-based application. It lives on a server you set up, provides an interface to display all the data you gather. We'll dive deeper into the interface in a little bit. We'll go through some demos. Your dashboard is configurable, so you can get the data you want right up front. There are a ton of pre-built reports and widgets, and the system is flexible enough that with a little bit of knowledge and something from John afterwards, you can create your own. The web app is fully responsive. It's a bootstrap app, so you can check in on your fleet, on your phone, your iPad, your Motorola Razr, anything with a browser. It supports CSS. The MunkiReport app is written in PHP. A lot of people have good reasons to dislike PHP, but it is a very common language. It's super easy to pick up the basics of. There's a lot of Googling you can do around it. With a little bit of basic PHP knowledge, you should be equipped to make your own custom reporting modules. That was basically how I started. I knew enough PHP to break everything, and I had an itch to scratch as far as making a reporting widget, and kind of spiraled out of control from there. MunkiReport was originally designed as a reporting system just for Munki. It's kind of a simple way to gather information about Munki, hence the name. Over the years, it's grown a lot. There's a lot wider of a scope, and it's supporting a lot more information than it used to via these customizable modules. The list of information you can grab is kind of ridiculous. Not only information now about how Munki is running, configured, or installing software to your machines, but you can also collect data about, say, security items like File Vault, SIP, Gatekeeper, the firewall. You can track the location of your machines with the easy-to-add pinpoint module, location services. You can show what users are administrators, keep tabs on your warranty. There's even a link to Apple's Global Service Exchange. If you are self-servicing, you have a GSX account, you can pop it in an API, get exact purchase, date information, and warranty information. All the way down to letting you know whether the batteries in someone's Bluetooth mouse are starting to get low. If you've ever heard of or looked at SAL, MunkiReport does many of the same things, just in a little bit different way. SAL leverages Puppet for all the grunt work and data gathering, whereas MunkiReport uses a set of client scripts. If you're using Puppet, definitely recommend you evaluate SAL as well. Like I said, they kind of do the same things, but it's worth looking at the options. SAL has a very pretty dashboard. I'm a sucker for graphs, so. MunkiReport was created and is still maintained by Arjen van Bakoven, who you can find lurking on Slack and taking selfies. And the application is fully open source. It's hosted on GitHub, and new contributors are always welcome. Whether you're writing a module, fixing one of our typos, pointing out a bug, or just making a feature request for something new in a new module. This software is a labor of love from the MacAdmins community. Right now, we have 36 contributors with over 2,700 commits and 33,000 lines of code. So there's plenty to do. There's plenty more features we can add, and we're always looking for help. Community around it, the biggest part is probably on Slack. If you're not on the MacAdmins Slack already, you should be. Go to macadmins.org for your invite. We're in the MunkiReport channel. We're also on GitHub, github.com/MunkiReport. And the MunkiReport PHP issues queue is where all of your bug reports, pull requests, feature requests, any kind of communication can go. There's also a Google group mailing list if you prefer email. And many of the contributors, myself included, were kind of prodded along into doing things by feature requests. We actually were just talking this morning, just before this presentation, like, oh, hey, you know, what if we gathered printing page data? Well, that's great. File a feature request. Let's take a look at it. The security information that I wrote the module for, I'd been meaning to do that for about 10 months and just had kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, and someone put in a feature request for security information. That finally got me going. Baked goods, cookies are always good. They're motivating. So what's in the box? At its core, MunkiReport has 4 main functions. You can... Whoa. That's not our talk. We're not going to use any novel one-way hash functions in this one. So MunkiReport gathers your data, stores your data, displays your data, and allows you to export that data. Let's run through each of those real briefly. MunkiReport uses Munki's built-in pre-flight and post-flight script running abilities. So there's no need to modify the version of Munki you're installing to your clients. When it is installed on a client, the module scripts are placed in folders called preflight.d and postflight.d. Essentially, when Munki runs, it calls the preflight script, runs all the scripts in preflight.d, and pushes all that data up to the server. When it runs postflight, runs everything in postflight.d, pushes that data up to the server. Speaking of pushing things to the server, that's the second function of MunkiReport, is data collection. The web application accepts data from report clients as they check in during their Munki runs. Data can be stored either on an SQLite database, which is literally just a file on the web server, super easy to set up, or on a full MySQL server. John will get a little bit more into that during his demonstration of how to set it up. Both are perfectly valid for production. If you have more than probably 30 machines, you're probably going to want to look at MySQL. SQLite tends to fall apart when you've got a lot of machines checking into it, just because it can only really handle one connection at a time. By storing the data in a relational database, MunkiReport makes it super easy to sort, count, query, export your data. Whether that's displaying it on the dashboard in a web interface, whether that's using a widget or a module, or if you know a little bit of SQL, you can pull custom reports out from something. In Massachusetts, you have to pay a specific business tax on fixed assets. So our finance team comes to me every year and says, we need a list of all our fixed assets, most of which are Macs. I have a query I can write in MySQL, gives them a nice Excel spreadsheet of what the asset is, how long it's been around. Super, super easy. There's 4 kind of main ways that MunkiReport will display your data. There's the dashboard, which you saw a screenshot of before. It's fully customizable. You can kind of add and subtract widgets in your layout. Make sure that what you care about is right up front. My dashboard is pretty graphs and it's kind of small. John's dashboard has, I think, literally everything on it.
Most of it.
Yeah. Some reports are included by default. Reports are just a group of similar widgets around a theme. So a security report will have security things. The MunkiReport will have all the widgets about Munki. The location report will have location, etc. It's also pretty easy to write your own reports. Again, it's just grouping widgets, so it's just a few lines of code. Listings are the gory details. So that's the sortable, searchable table containing all of the data that a module collects. Because they are sortable and searchable, though, you can drill down to the metrics that you want. Every single column is sortable. So you can say, all right, well, who is the person who has rebooted their computer most recently, least recently? You can do some visits, give a high five and a finger shake as appropriate. Finally, the client tabs, they show a little more organized view of the data that would be in a listing, but only one machine at a time. So this is kind of like your snapshot overview that you're looking at when you are trying to figure out, well, what's a machine doing? You're doing some troubleshooting, or just you want to know how a machine is behaving overall. All right, let's do a demo. John was nice enough to populate a, there we go. I'll zoom that in a little bit. Make that text a little bigger. Is that size okay for everyone in the back? Cool, awesome. So John was able to make a little database with some fake client data in here. So we'll take a quick walkthrough and demonstrate some of the features that we have in MunkiReport. So this is our dashboard. All of these little blocks here are the widgets. So you see we have one here for Munki that's telling us we have three clients with errors, 4 with warnings, etc. All of these widgets are available in the configuration file. So you can see some of them are super big, like the client activity or events, and some of them are little tiny ones. You can kind of puzzle those together however you want. For me, I don't have the client activity one. John does, because he cares about that. So again, you can just kind of customize it however you like. The other thing that's newer and is kind of nice, every widget also has these little buttons up in the corner here, kind of looks like a bullet point list. That will take you directly to the listing that widget is pulling information from. So for the Munki listing, Munki widget, if we click on it, we go to the Munki listing. Makes it a little bit easier to navigate around. Most of these buttons and these kind of stoplight looking widgets are also clickable because it's, again, sortable and searchable. So who has an uptime greater than 7 days? Let's sort it. Wow, Nick, 7 months. Gonna have a talk with him when we get back. Yikes. There's also a couple different languages that are supported. Up here in the corner, you'll see a little globe icon. Right now, the languages are German, English, Spanish, French, Dutch, and Russian. Of all the translations, English is kind of like the fallback language, so that's your default. The German and French translations are complete. If you speak Spanish, Dutch, or Russian, or another language, please contact us on GitHub. We would love to have your translation ability kind of round things out. So you can, this will remember things, so if you need to go back and forth, it'll remember what language you've chosen. As you can see, Wi-Fi status is one of those that's not translated yet. There you go. And lastly, we also have our themes, which are this little wrench right here. John likes the slate theme because it's nice and dark. Default theme is a little bit brighter for those of you who want to burn out your retinas in the morning. And there's also one called Simplex, which I kind of like, although it's tough to read sometimes on a big monitor because the text is very thin. But I like the purple. All right, let's switch back to Slate because it's a little easier to see in this room. So that's our dashboard. Let's talk about listings. So again, these are the gory details of literally everything. So this can be a little bit of information overload, but it can also be super powerful to get whatever metric you want out of MunkiReport. The one I probably use the most is the client's listing. When we go to a listing, you'll see we have a couple different pieces. Zoom in a little bit so it's easier to see. We're always going to start with the host name of the computer, always at the far left, and the serial number. And the username is going to be the currently logged in user. So that's the user that was logged in when it ran. Question?
Why is the host name presented
Catch box.
Sorry, yeah, we'll catch back to that the next time. The question was, why does the host name present that way? It's because it is clickable.
and more characters?
Put in a feature request if we need more characters. Yeah, absolutely. So these are all clickable, so you can go back and forth. So we can see Nick, who has not rebooted his old iMac in 7 months. Yeah, kind of annoyed at Nick right now. So this is the client's. I mainly use this when I'm looking to find a specific machine. So if someone calls the help desk and says, hey, my computer's running super, super slow, I can say, all right, well, what's your name? I can type in Nick, and I can get Nick's machine right there. You can also search by the manifest. So if you're looking for, say, a list of people who are in a specific Munki manifest, if you're using big group ones instead of like a one-to-one kind of manifest situation. And you can also search by type of machine. So if I want to look at all our iMacs, I can pull up iMacs, and I can see that pretty much Nick is the only iMac who's not rebooting regularly. Okay, well, got to have a talk with him. The Bluetooth listing, another perennial favorite. That's the one I was showing the screenshot of earlier. This is actually pretty useful. The thing I use it for the most when I'm troubleshooting our remote offices is people call in and say, hey, my trackpad won't click anymore. And I'll look at their Bluetooth listing, and they'll have 3 mice and 2 keyboards connected. Okay, well, we kind of know what the issue is there then. Again, we're starting with that same format. We'll start with the host name on the left, serial number in the middle, username, and then the device data. Let's see. We'll do my favorite information overload module, which is the fans and temperatures, which is probably illegible from the back of the room because it's so much data. This is a great example of why listings are not always the place you want to go when you need information. It's just kind of a little bit too much to go for every single person. Just because, heatsink 2 might only appear on one machine, you're kind of looking through a lot of noise. That's where our client tabs are going to come in. Another one that I use constantly, anyone else here take care of creatives or publishers or advertising agencies? I see some nods. The fonts module. Fonts are like just below printers on my pain in the neck list on a daily basis because when we're cranking out work every day, all day, every client has their own font. This module is one that John coded, and I use it pretty much every single day. It simply just grabs a list of all the fonts in the system and makes it searchable and sortable. There is a preference to ignore system fonts, so you can ignore kind of the noise of the built-in stuff. It does a quick check to see if it's a duplicate font, so it's a super easy way when you're not standing next to someone or don't want to say, okay, look in font book and click and look for the duplicate fonts and all that. And the valid thing is a flag that font book actually puts out. So if your font is corrupted, it'll say, no, it's not valid. So super, super easy. Again, ton of information, really easy to present on a client listing on a person-by-person basis. Or you could say, you know what, I want to see all the people who have Helvetica installed. Well, that's going to be pretty much everyone. But network shares is another one we use a lot. You scroll all the way down. We have a couple of modules available, as you can see. Network shares simply gives you a list of what network shares the machine's connected to and how they're connected. It'll also show you the path, so you can see if someone's connecting over a DNS name or if they're connecting over Bonjour, like this guy right here on Sarah's machine. It'll also tell you how they're mounted. So if you're running a setup where you can run both AFP and SMB, you're running into issues, super quick way to not have to walk the person through a terminal to find out how they're connected or something like that. Displays is another one we use a lot. This will give you a listing and readout of all the displays in your environment. So whether that's built-in ones, you're built in on a laptop, or an external display, so you can count how many pixels are available to your users at any given time. Of course, I would be remiss if I did not show you the Munki listing, because this is MunkiReport after all. This is a kind of a simple, clean way to search through. I use this for manifests all the time to see what if I have any clients who have suddenly gone off of their assigned manifest because someone has tinkered with their laptop. It'll also give you a sortable warnings and errors. These are the ones that would kind of disappear into the ether if you're not capturing logs or something else from a client. So this is kind of our scoreboard on whether or not our deploy is working smoothly or not. We can see Casey has 70 Munki warnings. So I'm going to bet Casey's running an old machine. Yep, running 10.7.5, a lot of packages for 10.9. Well, that because we're going to have to upgrade Casey to get those cleared out. The last listing I want to show you is the USB devices list. This is useful. We have a couple of business units that restrict what devices we can plug into them. Some of them have USB ports disabled entirely. So this will give us a warning if someone has managed to disable those controls and get a USB device plugged in. Again, super, super, super easy, but very, very, very high on the information list. But we can see, all right, who has an Apple keyboard? There's our users who have an Apple keyboard. Useful if you're doing hardware refreshes or if you're in a school environment and you need to figure out how much of something you need to order for next year. All searchable, sortable, countable. And if you need to export it, there's this little CSV button right up here in the corner. Click CSV, downloads an Excel spreadsheet, done. The next thing I want to go over briefly is the reports. So that's this tab right here. These are all reports that are built in. So if you install MunkiReport today, you have all of these. The app versions report is one of my favorites. This is kind of another scoreboard for how we're doing on our deployments. This is fully customizable. So basically you paste in the names of the apps that you care about. So Microsoft PowerPoint.app. And what it will do is go through and do some SQL magic and count up what's installed on how many machines. So I see I have 5 people on 15.34, 6 people on 15.33, a couple on version 14, which would be Office 2011. If you're doing volume licensing, this is priceless. When we did our last licensing exercise, it took us about 4 or 5 days to get all the Windows clients arranged and get everything counted and good to go. I visited this page and had the Munki stuff in about 5 minutes. So this is super handy. We're tracking, we just kind of put some standard ones in here, so browsers, Microsoft Office. You could also use this as a checkup on security things, say Adobe Flash Player, or a specific antivirus that you have going on that you need to make sure that client is installed at a specific version. This is a kind of a one-click, and again, click through, sortable and searchable. So this is, when you click through, you're going to be able to see who has that software installed at those different versions. The backup report is another one, because we all know that backups are super important. MunkiReport supports gathering data from Time Machine, from CrashPlan, both their cloud version and the professional on-prem one, and Backup to Go. So this is basically just looking at logs on the client machine and kind of pulling that data out as to when their last successful backup was. Again, searchable and sortable, so we can figure out when the last successful backup was. Looks like the lower iMac wins the prize for last one, and our email server is backed up into the future in 6 days. All right. Man, I need a copy of that software. Holy mackerel.
It's a time machine after all.
The client report is the pretty graph report. This is usually what I show the CIO when we're having meetings, because it's very nice. This graph simply just shows you how your fleet's growing over time. Each color is a different model of machine. So in this case, our red is iMacs. We can see that we laid in some new iMac supplies for the beginning of 2017. This can also be useful if you need to give some kind of presentation or summary about what your deployment looks like. Saves you from having to put the data into Excel and do a graph yourself. This is also super useful. I was in a freelance position at one point where I controlled the management of the fleet, but not the deployment of the fleet. So it was useful to know, because I wasn't doing purchasing, what was actually out there and in what quantity. The client activity, I think the high score for this is about 22,000 or so. Right now it's 0 because we don't have any clients checking into our MunkiReport, but anything that's checked in, I believe it's in the last 2 days, shows up as an active client. There is a school district out there running MunkiReport on a single Mac Mini with a SQL database that's handling 22,000 clients. So it's a pretty performant app if you give it the right resources. And at the bottom, there's also the OS breakdown. It's got some pretty colors. Again, I'm a sucker for graphs. If you're a shop that binds your machines to AD, there is a directory services report. This will pull out any machines that whose hostname doesn't match what's in the AD computer object. It'll pull out a list of your duplicate computer names too. So if you need to do a naming cleanup, this is a good little checklist for you. As you can see, we're not binding anyone in this little demo. The managed software report is kind of our Munki troubleshooting dashboard. Again, you can see that little widget in the top left that gives us our error and warning count, but it's also going to tell us a lot of information about the Munki installs that are happening on the machine as well, especially the pending Apple updates widget. There's nothing in here right now for our test ones, although I'm sure that's just because we didn't put that data in there. There's always pending Apple updates, especially for the guy who hasn't rebooted for 7 months. Again, if you're, got a little downtime, you're a little bored, this is your checklist. It's a good way to figure out who needs to go and be cajoled into doing a little bit of a reboot. And again, these have these searchable and sortable bits, so you can always go back and drill down if you need that data in a slightly different way. The security report, this is my baby. It's constantly evolving. There's 3 more data points that we're going to be adding, coming to a Git repo near you soon. Right now, it's just things like Gatekeeper, SIP, if file vault encryption is turned on, that kind of stuff. We use this for a really kind of light security monitoring dashboard. Obviously, it's not going to do something like a Tenable Nessus solution wouldn't give you what vulnerabilities and stuff, but this does give you a good little baseline. So if you don't have a really hardcore compliance, but you have a good idea in mind of what you want to do, a report like this can help you, once or twice a week, just kind of go through, make sure that everyone's still in the green. Storage is a really great one if you have a huge deployment, especially for lab computers. You get a nice breakdown of what you've got as far as type of disk, so solid state, hard drive, or fusion. And you also got a breakdown of free disk space. So that way you can tell when someone calls in and says, oh, lab machine 24 isn't working. Well, you can see it's because the disk is full and it just needs a manual cleanup. The last one I want to show you is the location report. This uses a piece of software written by Clayton Burleson, who I think is here this week.
Yeah.
So give him a high five. Essentially, it just pinpoint uses location services on your Mac, and it grabs an approximate location. Now, obviously, it's not perfect. Location services isn't pinpoint accurate, but it gives you a good enough idea. This is something that I was pretty excited for because we only had this available in our old Meraki MDM. So this just gives you a basic idea of where your machines are. Looks like we have 2 machines that are sleeping with the fishes right now in the Gulf. Right, doesn't look like anyone's at MacAdmins, so that's too bad. Yeah, right. They're the poor ones who had to pay for $30 a day for cruise Wi-Fi, right? The last piece I want to show you before we go into the client tabs, which I always forget about, is system status. This is kind of an internal thing. This is just showing you what's going on with your MunkiReport server. If you're having a weird issue, if data's not showing up correctly, if you're getting error messages, pop over here. A lot of the times this will give you a lot of troubleshooting information. If you've ever worked with a PHP app before, you can get your extended PHP info from the server, which has every module and configuration setting, so you can check on that too. The last thing I want to go over real quick is the client tabs. So let's pick on Greg. So Greg has a Mac Mini, and this is what our client tabs are going to look like. We've got an overview tab that kind of summarizes a lot of the stuff that's in our client and storage widgets. This is our tag section, so you can see we've tagged this one desktop. These are just free-form field. You type it in, press enter, that's your tag. There's a report for those tags, so if you want to tag machines that are out at a conference in Pennsylvania, you can just tag them, press enter, and then you've got a clickable way to narrow those down. This just kind of an extra way to sort things. There's also at the bottom here, we've got a comments field. This is, again, free form, so if you want to write a note to all your other technicians who are using this, hey, this person has a crazy setup with 5 monitors and 6 adapters, and it breaks a lot, but all you have to do is power cycle this and it works. This is a great place to put it. So this is not visible to the client, only visible to you. So kind of like a help desk notes kind of thing. And it's got, a pretty WYSIWYG editor, which is sweet. Up here on the right, we've got a remote control button. You can set this in your configuration file to either use remote desktop, so click once, pushes you over to remote desktop for the machine, or you can use SSH. It'll just open up the terminal and do SSH. The way that works is it uses the last IP the client reported from. If you are in a super, super dynamic environment, like some schools where clients are constantly bouncing around in that range, might be a little bit problematic, but for the most part, if your DHCP leases are long enough, you should be able to just click it and go. Up here in the top left, we have the show button, which gives us all of our available client tabs. Now, this is a huge list because we have every module enabled right now. There is a feature we just added in the config that allows you to hide anything that you don't have enabled. So if you don't have a GSX account and you have that enabled, you don't have to look at the GSX thing. It's not taking up screen space, kind of collapses things down, makes the sorting a little bit easier. So as you can see, let's use displays as an example. This is giving us the same information that huge client listing did, but it's doing it in a much more readable way. So you can see Greg has 2 monitors, 1440 by 900 and a 1280 by 800. Another tab that I use constantly is the inventory items. This gives you a list of every single app installed on the machine. Everything. This is super spammy because it does include things in the library and system library. So all those weird, especially developer tools that kind of get hidden all over the place show up. There is, however, a third-party software report. So inventory items have 349. The third-party software has 165. So this is mostly what you're going to find in, say, the applications folder. The other thing that I like about this client tab is it gives us this process name. This gives us a clue on how the software was installed. Installer means that the user double-clicked a package or it may be installed by Munki or something that was used in the installer on the command line. If that's blank, it's a drag and drop app from a disk image, or just kind of unzip into your applications folder. And then there's store agent or store agent D, which means came from the App Store. So also useful for licensing. Can figure out if someone has the Mac App Store version of, say, 1Password, or if they downloaded it from a site. We also have our Munki page here. So again, same information you're going to get on a listing, but a little bit better. This gives us a lot more information about how Munki is configured. This additional Munki info button will actually give us all of the preferences that are set on the client. So if you're not, say, enforcing those with a configuration profile, or if you are, but something's a little wonky, you can see kind of the effective settings there. It also gives us a list of all the managed installs. This is just pulled directly from Munki on the machine. So you can see what's installed, what's failing, and then what's pending. So user deferred an update, or it wasn't an unattended install, so it's just kind of sitting there waiting for them to hit the go button. Lastly, we also have the power, which shows your power status. Super easy. And let's pick on a laptop real quick. So let's go to, not Crash Plan, clients. And we're not going to use Greg since he's on a Mac Mini. Let's use Becky's MacBook. Power and battery gives us some good stats about this. So power is going to tell you power utilization. Battery is going to tell you your battery. If any of y'all have ever looked at the Apple Service Toolkit displays, it says, oh yeah, your battery's doing really well. It's like a weird like plot chart. This actually pulls that same information. So the health percentage is what you're looking at. Below a certain metric, your battery's unhealthy. It's not going to pull a charge. So this gives you some great information on how discharged it is. It'll tell you how many cycles it's gone through. So pretty new laptop. This one's only had 54. The other thing, if the machine is plugged in when MunkiReport runs and it's data gathering, it'll give you information about the adapter. So that can help you troubleshoot remotely if someone's using a wrong size adapter. That is pretty much it for our demo portion. I think the one thing that I would be remiss to not show you is the user sessions. I personally don't use this because we basically don't have any shared machines. But this module tracks login, logout, and reboot events. So if you're working on deployment that has shared machines or labs, this will let you track where a user was and where they logged in. So if you're trying to track a problem that's following a user, you got a list right here. And this is also sortable across machines as well in the listing. So you can track a single user and where they bounced from and give them a high five or yell at them depending on what they did. So that is our demo. We'll go back to the slides real quick. This is John's graphic design work, by the way. I didn't ask for this at work. So other than pretty graphs, we've talked about some real world stuff here. We use MunkiReport to feed our asset management systems. There is a JSON API that MunkiReport provides, as well as that direct SQL access. So we can put data in and out pretty easily. We use it to assist in troubleshooting, especially with our remote users. We have a big contingent of designers who work from home. And having that kind of background information without having to walk them through where to pull it in for us is super handy. We can look at what versions of software they have installed, if management actions from Munki have failed, or if their disk is just full. You're probably wondering, this is probably a pain in the butt to configure. I'll let John handle that. It's not.
Cool. Thanks, Rick. So it doesn't take much to make MunkiReport tick. At the very least, it requires a web server with PHP 4.5 or higher, with PDO SQLite 2 and libxml modules installed. It's easy to install, but the gist of it is download the latest release from GitHub, extract, configure, and upload to a web root. That's it. And for those of you who use Docker, there is a Docker container available. That's the server half. That's literally all it is to take for a server. Now, for the client half, there are 3 ways to install MunkiReport onto a client. The first is to curl down the install script right into sudo bash. This isn't really a good idea because you're pulling down a script from the internet right into sudo bash. But it's useful for quick testing and troubleshooting, but it should not be used as your normal install method. The second is to curl down the install script, stage the installation, and have it build a package that you would then import into Munki. This method is more secure and easier to manage for rollouts and is self-contained. The last way to install MunkiReport is to create an override for the MunkiReport auto package recipe that contains your installation URL and other config options. Auto package will then curl down the install script, stage and build your package, and then import it directly into Munki. This is the best method for keeping your clients up to date, because when you update the MunkiReport instance on your server, a new client package will be generated on the next auto package run. So let's install MunkiReport on our demo MacBook here. Alright, so here's Safari. We're just going to hide Safari, and here's our desktop. On our desktop, we have the MunkiReport-php-master.zip, which I downloaded earlier this morning from GitHub. So we're just going to double click that to extract it. Let's give it a slightly better name. Just taking off that dash master. Now MunkiReport, without a blank config file in it, will error out and complain and yell at you. So we're going to put our config file right into there. Now let's take a look and see what we have on the inside of MunkiReport. We have our app, assets, build, and documentation, other things to make MunkiReport work. We're going to copy that into our default web root, which is a part of the OS X server app. Now let's go ahead and launch it up in Safari. Now because we don't have any authentication specified within our config, it tells us we need to make a password. Let's go ahead and make a super secure password of demo. We're going to generate that and copy that string. We're going to paste that into our config. I'm going to go back to Safari and back to site. Let's go ahead here and log in because we are super secure. And it yells at us that it can't connect to the database. That's because on this demo, it's trying to create a SQLite file, but it can't because the web server does not have access to write to the folder. Let's go ahead and give it access. And we're going to grant it access for the web server user. And that's going to read and write. No, we don't want to go back to Keynote. Go away, Keynote. Back to Safari, refresh the page. The magic number is always 3. And here we have our blank MunkiReport installation. We just installed MunkiReport. How easy was that? But now we need to get a client into there. So for that, we are going to use the curl to bash method. And this is just basically, probably can't read that, but it's all in the wiki on how to install MunkiReport. So we're going to copy that and put that right into bash. You guys probably can bash do this? Oh, it can. Alright, so right now what it's doing is it's retrieving the MunkiReport scripts, installing the modules, and then it's going to run through preflight, and preflight basically gets all information from your Mac, like location, admins, power, certificates, all the fun information. So that's what it's doing right now. And when it's all done with that, it'll dump us back out at the prompt. Alright, we're back at the prompt. So normally what would happen is Munki, when it does its hourly run, it would run preflight, and then it would run, install things, remove things, do management stuff. Then it would run post-flight. But we're going to force it to run post-flight now, so we're going to do sudo post-flight. And it's running the post-flight, it's seeing what it needs to update on the server, it sends the information to the server, and then it creates the tables for us. So we're all done. Let's see what information we have. Now, because this is the first client checking in, we do need to log off and log back in. And then we have our MacBook. So we can click on that and we see all the information about our MacBook here. So that was pretty easy, wasn't it? All right, let's turn it back to Rick.
So as John mentioned, there's a couple, excuse me, there's a couple security things you should keep in mind here. One is how you're installing it. If you are going to use curl to bash and run a script as root from the internet, probably need to not do that in production. It's probably not the best idea in the world. This is a kind of a trust but verify situation. You want to be able to look at what the script is doing and then roll it out to your Macs. Essentially, you curl down the script and run the bash script with whatever options, tell it which modules that you wanted to install, and it builds just a little package, like a Munki import, or as John mentioned, the auto package recipe will do that all for you. If you're using SQLite, protect your database file. You can do that a couple ways. One is by configuring your web server to just not allow anyone on the internet to download it. And the second way would be to move it outside of the web root and just change the path in the config file. The third way is you should always use HTTPS. You're pushing some possibly sensitive data about your deployment up to a web server, so you want to make sure that an attacker can't just kind of sniff that out of the Wi-Fi especially. Let's Encrypt gives you a free certificate for HTTPS if a one-off or wildcard just aren't in the budget for your department. You can set a passphrase to limit your client check-in. This is just a single line in the MunkiReport configuration plist that's on the machines, And if the client, when it checks in, tries to upload data, doesn't have the correct passphrase, nothing. It won't let it do any kind of submission. So this is a good way if you're going to make your MunkiReport server public, which we have to because we have so many work from home folks that aren't on a VPN all day. This is a good way to make sure that no one's going to be able to test the SQL sanitizing limits of the application. The next one is using reCAPTCHA, which I actually didn't know was possible until we started doing this talk, so learning things every day. reCAPTCHA is just the quick "are you a robot" thing. It does require a free API key from Google, but it doesn't actually cost you any money to do that, just a couple seconds of time. And that's just to try to limit brute force attempts. And the final one I think is pretty obvious: use the authentication. There is actually a way to run MunkiReport where you don't need to log in. As soon as you load the page, boom, you're the admin user. Probably not how you want to set it up in production. There are a couple different ways you can do that authentication. There's a couple integrations. There's none. Bad idea. There's the hashed local authentication, which is what John just demonstrated. So if you need to add a new user, you go back to that generate page, put in their username, put in their password, copy the configuration line, put it in the configuration file, save it, boom, they're all set. Or you can integrate with your directory. Pretty much any LDAP, so Active Directory, Open Directory that comes with Apple Server, Open LDAP, they're all supported. If you know a little bit about how to do the search filters, then it's pretty easy to shoehorn whatever you've got in there. There are examples on the wiki for Open Directory and Active Directory, because those are kind of the two most common. Those are going to let you give access to either defined users or defined groups. So that way you're not having to manage identity in more than one place. Plus then you get the goodies that come with directory services, right? You get the instant disable if you need to disable a user out of it. You get password requirements. You know that someone's not going to be using demo for a password, John. And you also get brute force protection. You know, that's going to show you if someone's trying to hammer this login page and guess your password. The two database types, local SQLite, it's literally just that file John was showing you. It's super easy to set up, but it does fall over once you've got more and more clients checking in and pushing data up to the server. The MySQL database is pretty easy to install. It's available for free, and the configuration is pretty well documented on the wiki. It adds probably, 3 or 4 minutes to the installation process if you've never done it before. It's pretty straightforward, and it's definitely recommended. Finally, there's a couple external integrations. There's the Google Maps one, which is what we showed you in the location report. You can view, I think it's 1,000 views per day on that Google Maps for free, no API key needed. If you've got a bigger fleet or a real big help desk that you're giving access to this app, you might want to get an API key for it. Again, there's a free tier that's pretty reasonable for you. GSX, if you have a GSX account, you can pull warranty information, purchase date information, all sorts of good stuff from there. So that way you have super up-to-date information about your AppleCare coverage. And if you're using Deploy Studio, the Deploy Studio module will pull in all of your logs and let you know what workflows a machine has run. As far as expandability, I mean, data into the system, great, but if you can't get it out, then it's kind of a problem. As I mentioned earlier, there is a JSON API, which will make pretty much every data point you want to get out available. It's a RESTful API. We link our asset tracker in there. You could link maybe a ticket tracker in there, kind of whatever software you want. If you can kind of write the glue code, you're good to go. We did mention the app is fully localized in those different languages. If you don't see your language, please help us out, contribute. And then there's these two things called machine groups and business units. These are a little tough to explain, but I'm going to give it a shot. We'll start with machine groups. There's a filters button, and machine groups is essentially just a way to group all of your clients into something. It's done using a setting on the client. So the client is saying, I am part of machine group, whatever. This is actually a screenshot from my production server, hence the classified bits at the bottom. So let's say I want to only see a dashboard, a report, a widget, or a listing that only covers one of those groups. I can uncheck everything except for, say, partners and Simon's employees, press close, and everything's filtered on that group. This is great if you need to manage different departments or different types of machines. So say you've got student versus faculty machines, but everyone needs to be able to see all of the groups. So this is just kind of an extra sort and filter function. Business units is more geared for doing things across companies or maybe from a managed service provider perspective. Essentially, it lets you group machine groups into a larger group that you can assign view permissions to. So for instance, we have, again for my production here, we have three different business units. We've got our agency in Boston at the top, we've got our parent company in the middle, and then we've got one of our sister agencies in Chicago at the bottom. And what I can do there is say, okay, we've got a help desk technician who only works on Chicago machines. I'm just going to have them be a manager for the Chicago group, and that's it. And they won't see anything else in that instance. So it's kind of a way to segment your users into different groups of machines. There is some more documentation on this on the wiki as well. If you're more interested in this and you want to kind of live demo, just grab one of us afterwards and we can kind of run you through it. It's a little more complicated to set up this way because you have to really kind of lay it out beforehand and how you're going to group. You'll also see that there's manager and user permissions. Users is you can do everything except for delete a client. Managers is you can delete a client. That's really the only difference right now. And now, John's going to talk about how to make a module.
All right, so we have about half an hour, so this might be kind of fast and fun. Now, modules. We have over 45 different modules, and there are more added with every release. They can collect nearly anything you'd want about the client or on the client. So what are modules? Modules are bundles of PHP and scripts that are installed on the clients, or in some cases, they are server-side only. Modules are modular in nature, and this allows MunkiReport to be highly extendable and easy to update and modify. Modules have 4 core parts. They are the model, controller, provides, and localization, also called the locales. The model is the powerhouse of the module. It does most of the heavy lifting, such as creating the database table, processing the data sent from the clients, and providing data to the widgets. Models run on the server, so if your MunkiReport installation is slow to process or present data, check your server's resources. Alright, we can see that on the big screen. Here is an example model. This particular model accepts a plist that contains 2 keys, text1 and text2. Within it are 2 functions. The first is the construct function, and its job is to create the table for your module and the rows within it. The second function is the process function, and it processes the incoming client data and saves it into the database. Controllers are the gatekeepers of your module and its data. They prevent access to the data and APIs from unauthorized systems and people. The API hooks are exposed within the controller, but can only be used by authorized callers. And lastly, the controller is the intermediary between the widget, which gets its data through an API call, and the model. This example controller has 3 functions. The first is the construct function, and it links the module parts together. The second is the index function, and it is useful for troubleshooting to verify that your module is working properly. The last is the getData function, and it returns data for a serial number via MunkiReport's JSON API. Provides are key parts of the UI experience for your module. Without it, MunkiReport will not load or show any listings, widgets, or client tabs that are included in your module. If your module doesn't have any of these, you can skip including provides in your module. Here's our example provides. It outlines what UI items the module has. And within it, we have 4 array items for client tabs, listings, widgets, and reports. Locales, or localization files, are JSON files that contain the variable translation strings used for your module throughout its UI elements. They are required if your module contains the UI items such as a listing, widget, or client tab. Only translate the strings into your native language. Contributors will translate them contributors will translate your strings into their own languages. Here's our example locale, containing the strings for our client tab, widget, listing columns, and report title. You can see on the left it has the string, and on the right it has the localized version of the string. As Rick demoed earlier, modules have 3 main parts to their UIs: a listing, client tab, and widgets. Now let's look at them in depth. Listings show the module's data for all machines, but they don't need to show all the columns your table has, but they certainly can. Listings have 2 sections: a static HTML table and JavaScript that formats and fills the data into the table. The table's contents are obtained through an internal API call to the controller. Not every module needs a listing, and modules can have more than 1 listing. Here's our example listing. The screenshot only shows the static HTML portion of it. At the top, you can see a small bit of PHP that initializes the module's used by the listing. In the HTML table below, you can see our text1 and text2 columns. The client tabs show the module's data for a single machine and can be accessed through the client overview page. They are similar in listings in that they pull the data through the controller with an internal API call, contain HTML tables, and have data formatted by JavaScript. Not every module needs one, and modules can have more than one client tab. This example client tab has a dynamically generated JavaScript-powered table and presents text1 and text2 for the client. At the top, you can see the HTML section div and client tab name header. And in the JavaScript below, you can see how it pulls data from the module using an API call, generates rows out of it, and then formats the rows into HTML for presenting to the user. Widgets are the fun little blocks of HTML and JavaScript that live on the dashboard. They display the data that is processed by the model and passed through the controller by an API call. Like listings and client tabs, a module can have one, many, or no widgets. And because of how widgets work, they can display data that is fully external to MunkiReport. This could be anything from a JavaScript-powered clock to a graph on another server or to an RSS feed on the local news station. This basically means that you can make MunkiReport your #1 go-to dashboard for all your information that you could possibly want. Here's an example widget shown here. At the colored block style widget with a red, yellow, and green block. At the top is the HTML framework for the widget. In the JavaScript below, you can see how it pulls data from the API and sets the variables in the HTML block. The client parts of the module are what get installed or sent to the client when MunkiReport is installed on it. The install script is run on the client to install the files and to install the scripts and files needed for MunkiReport. It runs as root, so keep that in mind when developing it. Things it does include downloading the main data gathering script, setting its permissions, and activating the module on the client. The install script is required in basically all but advanced cases. The example script written above is written in Bash. Install and uninstall scripts must be written in Bash. First, it sets the variables used by the script, then curls down the main data gathering script, sets its permissions, and activates it on the module, or activates the module on the client. The uninstall script is run on the client to uninstall the main data gathering script and clean up leftover module files. Just like the install script, it runs as root, must be written in Bash, and is required in all but advanced cases. The uninstall script is very basic. This example one deletes the main data gathering script and the cache file. The main data gathering script is the client-side brains of the module. Every time preflight is run, the main data gathering script will also run. It could be any executable script or binary that macOS supports, anything from Perl to Bash to AppleScript. Just remember that it runs as root and must complete within 10 seconds or be killed by MunkiReport's preflight. And it is responsible for generating the cache file and is required in all but advanced cases. The example script here is written in Python, and it generates demo.plist as the cache file. Cache files are the files that get uploaded from the client to the server for processing by the model. Each module is limited to one cache file, and cache files do not have to be generated by the main data gathering script. They could be any file on the client, although plist is the recommended file type. Cache files should be kept small, generally less than 500 kilobytes to limit network traffic and timeouts. Here's our example cache file. It is a plist containing text1 and text2 as two strings. Now, we've been hard at work since our last major module release back in March of this year. That's why we're very proud to announce the Mega Module Pack. Pull requests for most of these modules will be made during lunch right after the session, with the rest following throughout the year as I finish, throughout the week as I finish them up. We have some really cool ones in there, such as mouse tracking, Slack integrations, liquid sensors, bees, lots of really fun modules. Hi, Sauron. It's a fun one. Now, I just want to clarify something. This slide is partly made up of my to make a module for list and whimsical dreams. We will be getting to your question shortly. It's basically a joke slide. However, some of these are planned to be added to MunkiReport. I just don't have the timeline for them. But there is one module I am announcing today, and it's the usage stats module. Let's take a look at it now. So let's go back to Safari and go back to our demo that Rick was in earlier. And let's go back to Greg, because we just love Greg. Go do show all in the client tabs, and let's look at usage stats. We have awesome activities such as thermal pressure. So his Mac Mini is running fairly cool and pretty happy. And we have network activity. So he has downloaded 36.34 gigabytes since his machine was last turned on. What's Greg doing? Like Netflix, lots of Netflix. Disk activity, he's read 212.59 gigabytes of data. It's a lot. Processor usage. So his processor is running at 1.68 gigahertz, and it is using 8.79 watts of power. It's pretty nice. And we even have GPU usage, so what his GPU is doing. Because it's a Mac Mini, he doesn't have a backlight or keyboard backlight, but we'd see that. This module will be put into the GitHub as a pull request shortly after this. And let's go back to Keynote one more time.
You already did the demo.
Our demo. Yeah. All right. So does anyone have any questions? I know the gentleman in the back does. Can somebody chuck him the
catch boxes right in the middle
wherever
row
the box is?
Nice. Good throw. Oh.
You have to like pull it out.
Not going? Oh, technical difficulties. Yeah. All right, well, why don't you just ask it? We'll repeat it over the microphone for the benefit of folks watching on YouTube.
I noticed on the slide that you had email notifications for the module pack.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that and how it's going to work?
Well, that is, like I said, most of these are whimsical dreams.
Oh yeah, the question was, is email notification part of it? It's mostly whimsical dreams.
Yeah.
For
Mostly
that one.
whimsical dreams.
There is some basic email support that Aryan had started to add at one point. If you're interested and you kind of have an idea of what that would look like, hit the GitHub queue and kind of write up. I mean, a lot of the times when John and I are looking at modules and features and Aryan's looking at them, it's more a lack of time to really think through the whole thing and kind of design it in our heads and then code it. So if there's something that you would think I'd want to get an email notification for, a full disk or something like that, yeah, absolutely. Write it up and let's talk about it.
What my environment needs. I have those people that refuse to put their machines in the network.
Mm-hmm.
I just want them to get emails saying, "Hey, get your ass on the network." And check in.
Right. So he was saying in his environment he's got a lot of people who won't be on the network, won't check in. That's something you could probably that's something you could use with the API. Pretty much right now, write a little script in whatever scripting language you like to pull down data about inactive clients, because MunkiReport has a graph that tracks active versus inactive clients. You could say, if I haven't checked in a few days, cool. Then let's go and grab those people and send them a little nasty gram. This is the power of the API, is that that may be a feature that might be a real pain to code on the application side. But with a little bit of glue on the API, you can really pull that information into whatever you want to do.
Thank you guys for all you've done.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, y'all. Got a question over there by the window and one in the back as well. We got a working catch box now.
Dead battery.
Yeah, there we go.
Is it recommended?
Oh.
Is it recommended or not to run MunkiReport from your actual Munki server?
So yeah, that's a great question.
You
Munki
can?
is just a server, right? And MunkiReport is just a web application. Obviously, there's some security things you got to think about there. For instance, if if MunkiReport has a security problem in it that we discover, someone's able to exploit it. Well, are they going to be able to read your Munki repo, and do you care about that? Everyone's a little different. Some people manage not to have things like activation keys and serial numbers in their repo, so they don't really care if their clients are able to kind of dig around in there. Personally, I would say if it's not public facing, that's probably a risk that I would think is okay. Again, you need to evaluate that for your environment. If it is a public-facing MunkiReport server, like my company's is, because we have so many remote workers not always in the VPN, we definitely have it on its own little server. The VM we're running on is AWS EC2 T2 Micro. That's actually the free tier one. So if you want to play around with running it on a cloud server, you can do it for free for a year. So that's pretty sweet. The cost benefit there really just depends on your deployment. If it's small and it's only on the internal LAN, that might be something that you can save a little rack space with in your server room. It also we're demoing this with OS 10 server, but this runs on any web server with PHP. So Linux, BSD. I know at least 2 people who are running it on Microsoft Windows IIS. So if you're a Microsoft shop, you can run it there too. We had a question in the back, gentleman in the blue shirt. Nice.
File Vault 2 escrow?
Yes.
Question mark?
Yes. So that is a feature of MunkiReport that I did not mention. Just because it's a little more advanced, there is a File Vault escrow module. Essentially, it just stores the recovery key in the MunkiReport database.
Yeah, let's see if we can find Becky here, because I know Becky
has it installed.
Becky, I'm looking at the wrong thing.
Search.
I know I can search. All right, so File Vault.
File Vault escrow, yeah.
Yeah, so there we go. We see Becky's encrypted. She encrypted it back in March, and there's our fake key. And then we can see logical volume information,
core storage
serial
information
number
there. So the reason that I didn't include that, there is kind of a basic example script on how to get the data from your client up to here, but that's mostly left as kind of one of those exercise to the user things. Because we're talking about something as sensitive as an encryption key, there's no one right way to do that. So it's a little more, it's less out of the box,
Yeah.
right?
And another thing,
it is super powerful though.
It is.
The big, we don't use this. We use Graham Gilbert's crypt for File Vault 2. The big reason is that MunkiReport doesn't store that encryption key in the database in any hashed method. It's just plain text, which depending on your security situation may or may not matter. And the other thing is that there's no logging of who's viewed that page. So anyone with read-only access to the MunkiReport section can see that. Again, in your situation, that may or may not matter. For us, it does, so we needed something a little more robust. There is also a work in progress, from one of the contributors to do a similar thing for firmware passwords. So if you're interested in that, check it out. There's a pull request open for it. I know he's looking for some testers.
and the File Vault escrow module is another one. Is a more advanced module, and then that it doesn't really have like a client-side script.
Right.
And it doesn't really have a client-side module. It's basically a server-side only module that just sits there and waits for a file to be given to it, and then it processes it. It doesn't really run anything on the client itself.
If you're interested in playing around with the File Vault escrow, there is a script on the MunkiReport PHP wiki on GitHub, and it basically just runs the FDE setup command, encrypts the drive, sets up the users, all that stuff. It's really the key submission. And if you're going to do that, you definitely want to use HTTPS for sure. Any other questions, comments? Right up here in the front. Ooh. Oh, watch your laptops. Wouldn't be a PSU conference without someone almost being decapitated.
Can you run multiple MunkiReport servers in sort of a live configuration?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Like on this demo one, we have the fully populated full demo, and then we have our blank demo, which I installed earlier.
Right. So you can separate it if you want separates with virtual hosts. At the basics, it's a PHP app with a SQL database. So if you want to use, like if you're talking about like failover, like live load balancing stuff, absolutely. You can have multiple front-end servers running the PHP part, as long as they're talking to either one database server or a database cluster. Absolutely. The way we're moving from Amazon to Rackspace right now for a lot of our infrastructure. Rackspace has a MySQL as a service kind of thing, and we're messing with exactly that and doing some more localized geographic placement of the front ends just for easier client check-in. So yeah, it's a standard PHP app. As long as the database is reachable and you're sharing the same database, you can run as many front-end servers as you want. Absolutely.
And other than MySQL, there's no other database support?
Not
It
yet.
has,
Yeah.
theoretically, you can run it on any SQL server, but some of them are unsupported.
Right. So I
Like-
know it does not work out of the box with Microsoft SQL Server. I think it's Aryan his goal eventually is to abstract the database a little bit more. Right now, a lot of the models use very specific language. Like there's some compatibility differences even between the two supported database types. So he's trying to abstract that out a little bit more. One of the things that's kind of a long-term plan is there's some tinkering around with changing the framework from kind of this old MVC to something newer, something like Laravel. So that'll offer a little bit more on the geeky coder side. But in the meantime, it does work with PG-SQL with a little bit of tinkering. But it really just depends on what your environment looks like. Like if you're a PG guy, then
We're an Oracle.
oh, okay. I don't have nope. Closest I get to Oracle is Java and MySQL. So yeah, I mean at its base it's SQL. Some of the things that you might run into is some like the count and select distinct stuff that you might have to tweak around for syntax wise. But absolutely, and I mean if that's something you want to do and you figure out which pieces are bad and what needs to be replaced, make a pull request.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because you know someone's going to use it. You know, someone out there has a similar environment that they want to do that with. Any other questions up here in the front?
I was wondering for clients that are already out.
Oh,
Give a little.
Okay.
There you go.
For clients that are already out there and either not in a business.
All right, just go ahead and we'll repeat the
So
question.
clients that are already deployed, but either not in a business unit or you want them to get into a different one. Do you have any recommended strategy for doing that? Like one idea I had was maybe Munki scripts that do conditional things based on the name. But
Bingo.
like, do you have any better ideas?
So it depends on how you set up your manifests. The question was, is there a good way to move machines into different machine groups and business units once they're kind of deployed already out in the field? It depends on how you have your manifest set up. The way that we do our manifests at my company, we have one manifest for client. So we just have a Munki no package that enrolls them into the proper machine group. So if we need to change it, it's just a defaults write command. So you can push that out with maybe a Munki conditional based on serial number or name, the host name of the machine. Worst case, if they're accessible to you, even if they're deployed, defaults right over remote desktop will do the trick too. It's just reading that P list when it goes to check-in to figure out what machine group it's in. That's all. So yeah, that's a great question.
Thanks.
One more. We still got 7 minutes though. So
If you have your own pre-flight and post-flight scripts, how does having these directories impact them?
great question. So by default, when MunkiReport installs, MunkiReport just makes the pre-flight and post-flight scripts. It puts them in there in Python. So it's just there. When Munki runs, it calls whatever script is named pre-flight that's in the Munki directory, so user local Munki by default, and then it calls whatever's called post-flight in the directory. So if you're already using pre and post-flight scripts, there will be a little bit of tinkering necessary. One of the things that I did for a client, helping out someone on Slack one time, he had some clients that already had pre-flight scripts. So all he did was have his existing pre-flight script call the Munki pre-flight script. And so basically it's just chaining, all right, we did our existing pre-flight, now call Munki pre-flight, MunkiReport pre-flight, which then runs everything in pre-flight.d. Right, so Munki itself doesn't have the .d concept, that's a MunkiReport
So
thing.
when you would create your package installer for the desktop client,
You'd have to
make
modify it.
sure to remove the
Bingo.
pre-flight scripts. that are
Exactly.
in there.
Another way you can do it, those pre-flight scripts, obviously, Managed Software Center is running as Managed Software Update is running as root. If your pre-flight scripts are going to be less than 10 seconds in duration, you can actually just drop them into the pre-flight.d and post-flight.d folders, because basically MunkiReport will run whatever script is in that folder blindly. So if they're less than 10 seconds, they won't trigger the timeout. You can just drop them in there and use the stock MunkiReport too.
I did that for a test test run, and it worked pretty well.
Yep.
Except we have our pre-flight sets the client ID depending on where the machine is, and it
right.
needs to run
Needs
as
to
the
run
first
right.
thing.
So that's a situation where you can kind of edit that pre-flight script and just kind of in your install package, you'd basically just say, instead of naming the pre-flight script pre-flight, you'd name it MunkiReport_pre-flight, and then you can just chain that into your existing pre-flight. There's a lot of flexibility here, again, because you're not modifying Munki itself. It's a stock thing. You can just kind of tinker around and chain things together how you need on the back end. Any other questions? Kurt?
You guys were pretty adamant last night that MunkiReport is not just for Munki users.
That's correct.
Can you kind of, gloss over, because we're short of
I will
time,
say
on how you use it without Munki?
right now, out of the box, you really do need Munki.
No, I don't.
If you don't want to, tinker, it's not something that's you can do in 2 seconds. It does take a little more pre-thought, but this is something that John has been incredibly interested in.
Basically, all you need is to install like the main Munki package, like the Munki libs, like not managed software center, just the managed, like basically just the binaries. That's all it needs. You can install the app usage parts if you want to use the app usage parts as well. You don't need to set up Munki. You don't need to do anything other than just install it. Right. Some of the modules, like inventory module, may not work because they require Munki to run on occasion. But then you need to set up your own launch daemon to run pre and post flight. Other than that, that's all you really need. Just your own launch daemon for pre and post flight, as well as the Munki binaries, and then that's it.
Right. It's not very well documented at the moment, but it is something that I know you and Aryan have been super interested in. Just the flexibility of the reporting is pretty incredible, especially if you can pull in inventory data from somewhere else to kind of supplement what Munki would be doing. You can pretty much run it anywhere.
You can run it on anything, yeah.
Yeah, anything. And for those who know a little more about Munki, it's the user local Munki libs folder that needs to be there. And those contents, if those are there, that and Python are really all it needs to go, and a scheduler. But great question.
Okay, 3 minutes left. Any more questions?
All right, cool. I think we're all set. Thank you all for coming today. Enjoy your lunch.